I see Coach on. We're going to bring him on in 1 sec. You guys got to fill for 30 seconds just so I can make sure he hears us, and we'll bring on Coach Waters.
All right, you do that. Gary Waters, the former coach at Cleveland State, the winningest coach in Cleveland State history, spent 11 years there, 6 times, took the Vikings to postseason play, and had a real nice run in 2009. They stunned Wake Forest and made it to the second round.
Doesn't it always feel like the NCAA tournament loses momentum this week a little bit?
Yes, because there's so much time between games.
Right.
It just feels like, the women get it right. The women are starting up tonight, right? Their Final Four?
They are.
Yeah.
And Coach Wooders joins us now from Vegas. What's up, Coach?
Coach, how are you?
What's up, Coach?
I'm doing well. How are you?
We're great, thanks. It's great to see you. We wanted to pick your brain a little. We want to talk about your book coming up, but we also wanted to pick your brain a little bit about the Final Four because we know that you still follow the men's game closely. This is probably the most unconventional Final Four that I can ever remember in my lifetime. You've got, I think, a 4, 2 5s, and a 9, and the matchups are Florida Atlantic against San Diego State, which means one of them is going to the title game. And then in the second game, you've got, I don't want to call them blue bloods, but UConn has won, I think, 4 titles. So they're a traditional power who's found their way back. And then Miami's in their first Final Four. How do these games match up? What should we look for in the Final Four?
Well, I tell you, it is quite interesting, isn't it? I mean, I've never seen this all the time. I've been in basketball as well. But, I think there's a reason behind this. Think about it. Number one, many of the teams are older teams. Mm-hmm. They've been in there for a number of years. And because of the pandemic, it caused a drawback. And it said, now we're going to give you an extra year to continue your education. So you have 22, 23, 24, and then some teams had some 26 years old on their teams.
Wow.
So they're experienced teams. They're playing hard, and they're playing for each other. Before you were concerned because kids leaving programs. But because of them getting the 1 year back, they didn't leave their programs. They stayed there. So that's why I think a lot of things are going on that way.
Coach Shannon.
And answering your other question, I think this is quite interesting. You're going to have a mid-major in the finals.
Right.
And I think you go all the way back to when I was coaching and Butler went to the finals. You remember they went back-to-back finals.
Right.
And that was the last time I think a mid-major made it to the finals. And if that happens, that's unbelievable because you just never would expect that. But they played well. All the teams that are in there played extremely well. And I'm really fascinated by the Florida Atlantic. I mean, they don't have a lot in regards to financial support, but they're all the way here. And that tells you something unique what's happening in college basketball.
Yeah, that matchup, Coach, is really interesting because it's the 2 mid-majors. You talked about Florida Atlantic already. San Diego State defensively, I mean, they've been magnificent on that end of the floor, and that seems to, defense travels, it seems like, better than the offense, which is why I was leaning towards them. But I don't know. Which way you leaning in that game?
Well, I hate to say this, even though you had the Cinderella in there in Florida Atlantic, I think San Diego State is just too physical and too tough and also very old. I mean, they're going to have to deal with some players that have been there in this game for a long time, and they're very, very physical. Dutcher and I go back a long way, all the way back to Michigan. That's how I know him extremely well, and I knew his dad. Because his dad was at Eastern Michigan. So I remember him, and we had a great relationship. So I know the quality of basketball he's bringing to the finals.
Coach, when you look at, some of the blue bloods, you look at Roy Williams is no longer here. Coach K is no longer here. Jim Boeheim is out of here. The coach from Villanova, Jay Wright, he's gone. Do you believe that this is something where you see mid-majors kind of creeping in there and that this thing could be the new norm? You may not have as many, one-and-done guys who come in like a Carmelo Anthony that are just studs and they just lead their teams to championships. Is this something that you may see mid-majors just with older teams consistently be able to beat some of the larger name schools and continue to this one for a couple years after this?
Well, in answering that question, let me first say you left out a blue blood, Gary Waters, right? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But no, you know what? I think they're coming. I think now, because of all the new things that are hit in college basketball, the portal, the NILs, all those things are giving them ample chances to get out there and find some players that they normally wouldn't be able to find. However, I'm going to say again, this is a unique year because of the pandemic. Now, I think it's only maybe 2 more years at the max left on that. You get that 1 year because of the pandemic for the players that came in at that time. So, that's going to end. And so now the Blue Bloods are going to get back at it, and, they're going to be getting some great players again.
Coach, I'm curious. You coached in the Big East with Rutgers, and a lot of our fan base doesn't care. This is a selfish question just for me. I grew up in New York as a huge St. John's fan because I grew up with Chris Mullin and Mark Jackson and Walter Berry and Ron Test a little later, who I met at an airport and was I don't know. I didn't meet Ron Test in the airport. I met Malik Sealy in the airport, and Malik Sealy was an awesome dude. But anyway, St. John's, as you know, has gone down the tubes. They haven't been as good a team for a long time. They haven't been in the NCAA tournament for a while. They've gone through some solid coaches, but nothing's worked. Well, now they've hired Rick Pitino, who's one of the all-time great coaches, but he's done some things off the court. Whatever. Do you think Do you think he turns that program around? Like, can St. John's get back to being what they were back in the day, or even with Pitino, is that impossible?
Well, I think he turns it around, but I don't know if they can get back in the day like they were when St. John's was a power. Now, you got to remember, let me give you something that you probably don't know. Back in those days, they had a rule out that if a player lived in a community, meaning in a certain area, okay, and they gave that person cost of living to live in that area if they didn't live in the dormitories. And I'm talking about $20,000, $25,000, $30,000.
Right.
Back in that time period, both St. John's and DePaul were schools that did not have dormitories. So all their players, you take Rick Barry and all those guys lived at home and got money. So they're going to say they would stay home regardless. So, and that's why I thought they were so strong during that period of time.
Yeah.
Now St. John's have dorms and St. Paul and DePaul has dorms, and you see what has happened.
Right.
They're not the same anymore.
Yeah.
However, to springboard that a little bit, by adding Pitino, in my estimation, one of the greatest college coaches of all times, he knows how to manipulate, to maneuver, to do whatever is necessary to make his team successful. Okay, I'm just telling you that.
Yeah.
And and I'm telling you this. If you think about that on a team, it's been successful the last 2 years he's been there. So I don't expect it to change, but I do think that they will get more players coming out of that eastern area, meaning New York, New Jersey, coming to St. John's that hadn't been there before.
Nice. Yeah, that's going to be fun to watch for sure, to see whether or not he can jumpstart that program and get it back to where it was. I have to ask you about the story of recruiting local boy, now NFL superstar and 2-time Super Bowl champion Travis Kelce. You tried to recruit him, right?
You remember that. You know what? I'm going to tell you something. Travis was very close to coming to Cleveland State. And I loved his mom and dad. We had a great relationship. And his mom literally wanted him to come to Cleveland State so he could be close to home. And Travis really loved basketball. You know, it's funny. I've had in each program I've been in a player that went into the NFL.
Wow.
You know, Antonio Gates. I had one at Rutgers. So I'm telling you that that's not an uncommon thing I've been used to. So when I went into that household, I knew that football was prevalent in that person's mind.
Right.
However, I knew his abilities. And when I seen his abilities, I mean, our conversation ended where I felt he should go to a school that also had football. because of his abilities. I didn't want to limit him from that. So, but I tell you, he was really close to saying, "Hey, I want to come to Cleveland State and play basketball."
Wow.
I mean, how good was he? You know, you go back to look at it. Some of the best football players that play basketball, obviously, Tony Gonzalez. You got Antonio Gates was a guy. Julius Peppers played football. Ronald Curry played football and basketball. How good was he in terms of you know, was he a player that could have been somebody on the D1 level and
Could he play in the
noise?
NBA?
I don't think he was that level because of his size. He was only 6'6" at the max, and he could score the basketball, but he would have to do something very, very special. But at the mid-major level and at the collegiate level, I thought he would have did extremely well. Because I give you an example at Cleveland State, I had Bullock. You remember him at Cleveland State?
Yeah.
And he had a great career there. Let me tell you something. I seen something that I had never seen before. When Bullock, Janathan, his first name was Janathan Bullock, was in his senior year, and we went to the NCAA. He was the major one that led us to the NCAA, and he had some. He didn't have professional offers at the NBA level, but he had a lot of foreign offers. But the NFL wanted him because he was an All-American out of high school. So they came in and they talked to me and everything. Do you know they took over? They did what I call a process with him to train him to see if he was good enough.
Wow. They
came in to Cleveland and Cleveland State. They took over the entire school, the NFL. I mean, they took the soccer fields, everything, and they had training programs in all those just for this one person. That tells you how sophisticated the NFL is.
Amazing.
His own little pro day.
Yeah. Coach,
Yeah.
I know you're in Vegas, the NIT Championship, UAB, North Texas. You're on the selection committee as well. Who you like it? Who you think's going to win tonight? And what happened with UNC? They didn't want to play in the NIT?
Yeah, they didn't want. They felt that, what came out was that they had some issues within their team, and they didn't want to do it. And I hate to say, you want them there, but that's not uncommon because I can't say it's not uncommon because I had a situation similar to that when I was in Rutgers or at Rutgers. And the first year we went into the NIT, and my players didn't really want to be there because they thought they should have been in the NCAA. And so we lost our first game in the tournament. I think it was 3 years later we went to the NIT, or 2 years later we went to the NIT, and we were playing, and we ended up going to the championship game playing Michigan. I don't know if you remember that. Rutgers played Michigan championship game and all that. Before we went to that tournament, I gave them all an ultimatum. I said, hey, if you ain't not going into this tournament to play, I'm not going to accept the invitation.
Right.
And I gave them a ballot. They all voted, coaches alike. And they made the decision they wanted to go, and they played extremely hard and did well and went all the way. I mean, we beat teams like in the tournament back then. We beat Villanova. We beat West Virginia. We beat Temple with John Chaney. I mean, and they did it because they went in there prepared to play it,
right,
and really excited about playing in it. The uniqueness of the tournament this year, I'm going to tell you, I don't know, you haven't mentioned this to me, but think about the USA Conference. They have two in the finals of the NIT. They won the CBI with Charlotte winning that, and then they got Florida Atlantic in the Final Four.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a basketball
no one's
conference.
talking about that mid-major conference just dominating college basketball.
It's a great conference. It really
point.
is. Hey, Coach, before we let you go, you've got a book, 10 Principles of a Character Coach. And I want you to tell us a little bit about it. My son is coaching track and field at Rutgers, and I'm going to tell him to read this book. So what are young coaches going to get out of this book?
Now, I'm going to tell you about this book. But then give me a second to tell you about my next book coming out this year. And it probably won't come out to November. And it's got a lot about Rutgers in that book. So I'll talk to that later. But the book I have right now is 10 Principles of a Character Coach. The whole purpose is helping coaches understand you need character. And that's what I'm all about. And if in our society today, that's a major issue. And we talk about the principles of being a character-driven coach. And I tell you, last year I went to the Final Four, and they had me speak on it. Okay, this year I'm at the Final Four, and they're doing a book signing for me. But what I'm telling you is the coaches really need this. And when I went to the one a year ago, the room was filled, and I didn't speak until the last day, the Monday of the championship game at that afternoon. I didn't speak to that then, and I said, man, no one's gonna come to this thing. And not only that, they don't have your name on the schedule; they just have your topic on the schedule. So I didn't know. I said, nobody's gonna primarily be there. I went to that room, and that room was filled. And afterwards, I talked with coaches. I said, why did all you come to this? Why are you here today? They said, because we need character in our program. So character is such a vital issue in our society today, and I hope people strive to do that. Secondly, let me just say, I got a new book coming out. It's called Coaching Millennials from a Character Perspective.
Ooh.
Now, you gonna want to get that.
Now, that's tricky.
That's crazy.
And it's, each book, like the first book, 10 Principles, the highlighted time was when I was at Cleveland State. The one that I'm talking about with millennials is when I was at Rutgers. So,
Nice.
it's great reading.
Well, your kids always graduated. You always had character kids in your program. And look, that's one of the most important things parents should be thinking about in the recruiting process. I know the kid makes the decision, but the parents want their kids to be with a character individual that's going to not just grow them as an athlete, but also as a person. And you won championships in that regard. You always had character guys, and they all graduated and became better people. Coach, thanks for joining us. Good luck with the book. Good luck with the second book. I think that's going to be a really hot one because that's a tricky topic.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
Well, hey, it's been great talking with you, and it's been great being on your program.
Thanks, Gary. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Take care now.
A very familiar face
Yeah.
to basketball fans here in
Yes.
Cleveland. And as I said, the winningest coach in Cleveland State history.